do it anyway. Who cares? Like, the first step to creating a more positive association with environments that make your dog uncomfortable is putting them in those settings and getting control of the dog. Welcome back to the podcast, guys.
Hello.
Featuring,
Welcome.
You probably can't hear it, whining in the background. Today we're going to talk about doing it anyway.
Doing it anyway.
Doing it anyway. Inspired by this song.
Doing it anyway.
I'll play it for you guys, so that way you get the vibes.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yep.
All right. Well, now that we've all been inspired, do it anyway.
Yeah. With your dog.
This is specifically sparked by a conversation that I had with a client yesterday, which Kevin, he watches these podcasts all the time. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Kevin. He even said, Kevin. Maybe you should talk about this on your podcast. And I said, what a great idea.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about it. He has a Doberman that is just naturally just like a little anxious, high strung, suspicious.
Yeah,
you could
genetically,
say.
like in her core, I think. And then he sought out training because of those issues, correct?
Yeah. She was just like very all over the place.
Yeah.
And like she had a decent foundation, like she knew things, but he was having a hard time creating like a behavioral change as far as like seeing a decrease in the anxiety, more control in those settings, because she's very like bolty and just kind of wild.
Yeah, like squirrely almost.
Yeah, squirrely is a good word. Yes. And so she's doing great. I think that one of the things that we pinpointed for him, and this was something that he found to be a useful critique, is that a lot of times when you have a dog who's like very high strung, very like all over the place, sometimes we match that energy. Yeah. And so for him, he would like cycle through commands very quickly and really like do like, okay, now sit, now down, now come, now heel, and do all these different things, when our focus for her a lot throughout her training was just like duration, stillness, slowing things down, and also being very consistent about our communication. And so making sure that we are not micromanaging and we're giving the dog space to make clear choices, and then just giving them feedback on those choices. So he had a tendency to verbally use the word no as like little micro warnings all the time, but not correcting for it, and different things like that. So just slowing things down, being very consistent with, if I say no, I meant it, and I have to correct you for it, type of thing. And that's how we saw like a really big improvement in her behavior overall. But just our conversation yesterday was centered more on him saying that in certain environments, particularly if he takes her to work or things like that, she still doesn't feel like or look like she's super comfortable.
Yeah.
She's still kind of nervous and anxious and things like that. And so I spoke with him. I was like, is she behaving okay though? Is she following commands? Is she, and all that kind of stuff? And as long as basically the moral of the story was, as long as she is behaving herself and she's not acting out inappropriately, it's okay if she's a little bit nervous.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's just the nature of who she is as a dog. And I think he has a friend that comes to us as well, Mia, who's a Doberman, I think from the same breeder. And Mia's a little bit different. And I think when I've had group classes with Kevin, he keeps mentioning like, I just want her to be like Mia.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, she's not.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's a good point. Like, we always expect the dogs to be happy-go-lucky for everything and settle, but there are certain breeds that are leaking all the time and very vocal, and it doesn't mean they're unhappy.
No.
It just, they're like, they can't chill. They
Yeah.
don't have that regulation.
And I think that they'll be happier and they'll actually get better once we stop caring so much about it.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, I think that when you have dogs that are very high strung and anxious and you hyper focus on that and you're like, they're just like, they're stressing me out. I'm annoyed by their behavior because they can't relax. And you just aren't able to accept that about them and be like, okay, so they pant excessively when they're in a down, when I have them at work, or, you know, whatever it is. You just kind of need to let that go. And I feel like once you give yourself permission to let that go and not care that your dog is stressed, they will almost get better, because then you're not trying to micromanage them and do a million things and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Especially like working breeds have the tendency to be like, or sporting dogs have the tendency to be more like squirrely and wild like that.
If they're made to be pets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you get a working breed and you decide you want to make it a pet, you will generally have a little bit of like behavioral not issues, but like you can have a tougher time being able to manage that, just because they're not meant to live a pet lifestyle. And I think that this is a little rabbit trail, but I find it interesting that like people that maybe run a lot or go on hikes a lot or are active, you know, and stuff like that, they are like, oh, well, I should get a Belgian Malinois or an Australian Shepherd or these dogs because like I'm so active. And it's like, your level of active as a human is just what like a normal dog needs.
Yeah.
We're not like, let's not flatter ourselves, guys.
Yeah.
Just because you like to go on 3 hikes a week and you run 2 miles every day in the morning, and I'll put all of us humans down here saying that should just be normal human behavior. That's not anything extra special. That's just like a healthy level of activity. And so that is just like golden retriever activity. That's lab activity. That is normal dog activity. That's even Chihuahua activity. Like that is like, that's not Belgian Malinois activity.
No.
That's not Australian Shepherd activity by any stretch. So, and stop getting dogs like that to force you to be more active.
Because it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work. You just end up resenting your dog because you thought you were just going to magically become the person that they needed when you got them. And now you don't, because that's not who you are. And now you hate your dog because they require something of you that you don't want to have to give them.
Yeah. Or we hear like so much, like even a phone call today, I heard this, where people love a breed and they'll get one dog in that breed and they're like, that dog was perfect. Like that dog was so good. And then they'll get the same breed and it's a different dog, obviously. And they're like, this dog is nothing like my last dog. And they're like shocked. And they're like, I just thought all breed was supposed to be the same. And it doesn't work like that either, where temperaments can vary so much. Especially if we have a working hunting line dog. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely like, you just have to also, like, if you get a Rottweiler and it's super social and it's great with your kids and it's great with the neighborhood kids and it lets everybody pet it and you go to all the football games and soccer games and it's just the social butterfly and it's so good with dogs and you go, I love Rottweilers. Let me get another one. You're going to be sorely disappointed.
It's nothing like that.
Because that's not a Rottweiler. You got a golden retriever in a Rottweiler's body.
Yeah.
You got lucky with that one.
Or like decades of people's life. Like this person that called today was explaining like the last dog was so good, but he was like 10 years younger at that time. And it was probably likely that he had more time to give to the dog and he was more like mobile with the dog. Than it is like the dog is so much different. It's like your lifestyle changes. So when older people get dogs, like that are really high energy. They're like, this dog will keep me active. And then you're like, holy shit. Like,
Yeah.
I can't handle it.
And interestingly enough too, like say somebody does have like a really great experience with like a dog who is not a generally social dog or a good family dog, and they're like in their early 20s and it fits super well for them because they don't have kids, they're not around kids, they don't have a super like strict lifestyle, and then 10-15 years later that dog passes, and then okay, now they're married, they're having children, they're living a more suburban lifestyle, and they're like, let me get another one.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's not working well, and it's not because the dog is worse or that person maybe doesn't know what they're doing, it's that it doesn't fit your lifestyle anymore.
Yeah, and that's okay. Like, it doesn't need to.
But that was my rabbit trail anyways. So when it comes to dogs that are not super comfortable in certain settings or situations or things like that, do it anyway. Who cares? Like, the first step to creating a more positive association with environments that make your dog uncomfortable is putting them in those settings and getting control of the dog. So addressing any inappropriate behaviors, making sure that they're compliant with their obedience commands. I don't care if they're like miserable at first. Like if we're going from a dog who's erratic and
It's already miserable.
jumping and crazy and barking and reactive and whatever it might be, we have to control that first. I can't worry about what's driving that behavior and what's motivating and the emotion behind it, and I need to change the emotion. No, I need to get the symptoms under control first.
And then, the
and
emotion
then
changes.
we can fix the emotion. I get it. You know, those symptoms are not the end all be all. We can still do more work on that, and we can add positive associations into things. But if the dog is still bolting at the end of the leash every 5 seconds because it hears a loud noise, I can't make it like that noise until I get it to stop bolting every time it hears it.
Yeah, there's like that notion in positive reinforcement people that they're like, well, why is the dog behaving like that? And then they go from the why like backwards. They're like, we have to get to the bottom of this. And we don't know all the time why dogs do things.
No.
It's anxiety, it's genetics. Like, we can't pinpoint it. And really, like, knowing the why doesn't really change my solution.
No, it doesn't.
I'm not going to avoid the park if I'm trying to work on that. And that's the kind of lifestyle I want to be able to take my dog to Edgewater. Or like I can rethink, like maybe my dog's not a patio dog, and I don't have to do things that are not going to be beneficial for either of us.
Exactly. And I think that what you just said is interesting too, because like, sure, like if there's something that's important to you as a human that you're like, I really wish I could do this with my dog and I want to do it within reason, like, yeah, you can get your dog to be able to do that thing for the most part. But if you're only doing it and upset your dog doesn't like it because you think they should like it, and you actually don't really care whether they're there or not or whether they like it, who cares? You know, like if you have a dog that doesn't like to go to patios or bars with you, but you think it should like it. This is what dogs do, right? They go and they hang out and they mingle with everybody. Let go of that expectation of like, but this is what dogs should like. And just accept that you have a dog who doesn't like it and just leave them home.
You don't have to take your dog everywhere. Like, there are some dogs that just don't like that. And it's like the human example, I guess would say, is like your significant other is different than you and doesn't like going to parties, but you love going to parties. It would be a little bit selfish of you to always expect them to attend those parties if they're miserable doing so.
Yeah.
And like, it's not something that they work out. It's like a personality trait. And they can compromise and sometimes like go with you within reason, obviously.
Yeah.
But dogs are allowed to have like dislikes.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean like we're catering to them or avoiding situations. There's just certain situations I don't need to push my training in.
Yes.
Like I wouldn't take my chihuahuas to a loud patio where people are drinking and have no control over their dogs.
Nope. I wouldn't even want to be there.
No.
But yeah, just do it anyway with them. And then once you've gotten to a good spot where you're like, okay, they're under control, Now you can start to do some like classical conditioning with positive things.
Yes.
So maybe you have a dog who is really toy driven. So maybe you go in those environments and you play with them. And you play toys and you play tug and you play fetch and all that kind of stuff. And guess what? Now you can do that because you know that your dog understands there's consequences if they act out of pocket or act crazy. And so you're able to explore more of that, you know, fun side of things because it's not going to easily just like tip and spiral off, you know? And then maybe you have a dog who's very food motivated or whatever. Take some food that's like very high value to them. And let's say maybe the dog has a noise sensitivity. Go somewhere where the noises are going to happen that make them uncomfortable. Put them in a down or, you know, even just standing there with them. That's fine. Every time the noise happens, give them the food. And again, there's ways to use food that is classical conditioning, and then there's ways to use food that's more in like a positive reinforcement operant conditioning way. And I think it's important to know the difference depending on what you're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
So classical conditioning is where we're trying to use the food generally just as something the dog really likes, and we're creating an association of them getting something they really like after something environmentally happens. So like a big thunder crack happens and you immediately give them a piece of cheese. I'm not asking them to do anything in that moment. I don't want them to do anything in that moment. I'm just simply associating when you hear a noise that makes you uncomfortable, surprise, you get cheese.
Yeah.
And that creates a more positive association with the scary thing in and of itself. And that's what you want to focus on. I think where a lot of people make a mistake, and I see this a lot with clients, where we have puppies. We'll do classical conditioning with food a lot with puppies. I'm not even worried about operant conditioning really at that age. And we'll be out somewhere and a big truck will go by. And it's like the dog's like, whoo, you know what I mean? Or maybe they have zero response to it, which I'm like, even better. But the big truck goes by. And in my head, I'm like, oh, that is a moment you want to capitalize on with a puppy. And I'm like, give him a piece of cheese. And then the owner pulls out the cheese and they go, sit, sit.
And they're like asking them to do something.
And they're asking them to do something before they get the cheese. Pointless. You ruined it. You ruined the whole moment. Pointless. And it's because now getting the cheese is dependent on them performing a behavior for you versus a big truck went by, surprise, here's some cheese. And they're like, oh, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
That was great. Bring on another truck.
Yeah. And it's like a positive dopamine release, like when they do get that food. So they are being like classically conditioned not to be as sensitive to noises.
Yes.
Or think of them so negatively, which is like with Icarus or dogs that are doing bite work or police work, like, or scent work, they have to be super confident. They need to be able to step on things that make weird noises. They need to be able to like go through obstacles without freaking out.
Yep.
And when you see a dog that's like truly like desensitized to all of that, it's like incredible.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because when I've been working with Icarus, and I actually talked to one of my clients on Instagram about this too, because she was like, I'll be honest, I was so surprised when I saw in the background of one of your videos that you had her on like a flexi leash
and a harness.
And a harness. And like, there's times where I'll be out with her. And I think it's so funny because the line between somebody who really knows what they're doing with a dog and somebody who has no idea what they're doing with a dog is so blurry at times because if you see someone with a puppy and a harness and on a flexi leash, you should either be really worried or not worried at all.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's no in between.
Or they're like, we're just socializing with the environment.
And I feel like a lot of times when I'm with Icarus, it can look like, if you look at what I'm doing through the lens of operant conditioning, it can look like I'm doing everything wrong. But if you look at it through the lens of classical conditioning, I'm capitalizing on the things that are important to me right now. I don't care that she bites me.
Yeah.
Case in point, my leg this morning. I don't care that she bites me. I don't care that she jumps on me. I don't care that she's crazy. I care about making her so rude and obnoxious and like pushy as I possibly can at this point, and so confident that, like, say I'm out on a walk and there's a dog that's like barking or something, and she's looking at it, and I'll say her name to get her attention, and she runs over and she jumps on me, and I give her a treat. You could look at that and be like, oh no, you're rewarding her jumping on you. You're thinking of it from operant conditioning. I'm thinking of it from the fact that there was something really interesting to her, and she was able to redirect her attention to me and engage with me. And that's what I want. And that's what I'm rewarding in that moment, is that excitement to be with me.
And if you're giving a big old correction when she jumps on you, she's like,
well, I don't want to be with you anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you're
it's
like a
like
stick in the mud.
Yeah, you have to like pick your battles with certain things. And when they're young, classical conditioning for me far outweighs any type of operant conditioning at that point, for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like if you have a dog who is nervous and uncomfortable, really hone in on, if they're older, you know, and they've moved from, because say you have a puppy, this is going to be different age wise, I think, in progression of behaviors. But like if you have a young dog who is just uncomfortable, but they're not doing anything about it yet, you got to get to work fast with that classical conditioning and the confidence building and all that kind of stuff. Once those coping techniques come into play of the reactivity, the lunging, the barking, the trying to run away and fleeing and stuff, now we do have to do a little bit of operant conditioning to get those behaviors under control first, take away those coping mechanisms, and then reintroduce the positive reinforcement.
Yes, yeah. I think it is interesting, like with puppies, like how different that they can be. Like even in litters, like one can be really confident, one can be really nervous. I'm fostering some puppies right now, and I have a male and a female, and the male is like so confident, like going up to all my dogs, like tearing through our little like grassed fence area, and the female is like, holy shit, this is all terrifying and scary. And instead of catering to her and picking her up and being like, it's okay, like I want to do this dog a service and be like, I am not going to pick you up or cater to you or pick you up when you're whining, because I want you to be able to think these things aren't scary.
Yeah.
And the male is like, sweet, I got that point. But it's so interesting because in a couple of weeks that could shift entirely, where the female is much more confident and then the male goes through a fear period.
Yep. Yeah. And the fear periods are an interesting thought too, because I mean, every dog as they're maturing will go through phases where they're just like extra sensitive to things and like very suspicious, and everything's a little weird. And I'm sure, like, I bet Icarus will have at least one more period in her where she's like that. But in those moments, you just have to kind of do everything you've been doing plus like a little bit more, you know, to compensate for it. And fear periods are not necessarily the time you want to like push things, like have them meet strange dogs that you don't know, have them, you know, put them in situations that are a little bit more risky, that you don't know exactly what the outcome is going to be, because they'll be a lot more impressionable in a fear period where it'll affect them a lot more long term.
Yes.
What other things, Bridget, can you think of like, when it comes to the topic of like, if your dog is uncomfortable places? I mean, I think to a certain degree, it's also, there's some dogs that just have a glass ceiling. Yeah. That like you can do all the classical conditioning in the world, but they're probably never going to love everything.
Yeah. And that's like our example earlier. It's like, if they just do not like that, and I keep trying to force like them to like that, I'm almost being selfish. It's like, yes, I want to be able to take my dog on a walk. I want to do the normal things, but anything that's abnormal, dogs aren't used to going to patios with children running around, people drinking, people coming up to them, things that are really foreign. Like, I don't blame them for not liking. Yeah. And I think like, a comment that I'm sure we'll get on this podcast is like, oh, well, the e-collar is making them nervous. The adversive training is making them nervous. It's like, this dog would be 10 times worse if the tools weren't there. Like Darby, before training, like I think Kevin had a lot of struggles with
that. Oh yeah, a lot.
And then you really helped him get to the bottom of that. And we even did a group class with him a couple of months ago, and she was being fine. And he was like, "Do you see that?" And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "She's being bad."
I think Kevin, you just have very high standards, which is good. I want you to have high standards.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a certain aspect of it of just like accepting the dog to a certain degree for like who they are.
Yes.
And yes, you can continue to strive for more things, but you have to be able to distinguish, is this something that I can realistically change, or is it just who the dog is? And if it's just who the dog is, you just have to accept it.
Like my beagle drives me absolutely insane, or used to a lot more. She still drives me insane. But the food seeking is 100% all the time, 24/7.
Yeah.
Nonstop, always seeking something to eat to put in her mouth. I've obviously worked with obedience with her, but I'm also in sporting with her. So I'm like, the sporting helps me like realize how talented she is at those things, and that I don't want to shut those behaviors down. So I have to start ignoring it.
Yeah.
Like when she goes onto the main floor and she's like digging under crates, like with her paws, I used to get really annoyed and like kind of get on her for that. And I'm like, she's just doing beagle things.
Yeah. Like I'm really on a kick with my clients lately because it's becoming more and more apparent to me. I don't know how much we just like get a dog and then hate the dogness of it. And it's like, that's the whole point of having a dog.
Yeah.
And I don't, they have no malicious intent. I think that sometimes it's coming from the source of like, they're worried they should be upset by it, or it'll turn into a bigger problem, or that it's not appropriate, or whatever it is. So this isn't to say that like they hate their dogs by any means, but more so that maybe they just need permission from me to be like, who cares? This is dog being a dog. Like Martha.
Yeah.
Martha, there's Lab, and she's cuckoo bananas. Okay. She's just cracked out all the time. And fantastic owners. She's doing great. And she was telling me how she took her to Pet Supplies Plus to get a bath one day. And how the bath wasn't fine. But when she was blow drying her, she's like, when I was blow drying her, she was just howling, just nonstop throughout, and the whole store could hear it. And I was like, well, was she like behaving badly? Like, was she just like, you know, like moving around and trying to bite at the air, you know, anything? And she was like, no, she just like sat there, but just kept howling the whole time. And I was like, who cares? Just let her do it. Like, she's not hurting anything. She's just being Martha.
Yeah, just being Martha.
Just being Martha. Who cares? And so I think to a certain degree, like, we need to like let dogs be dogs again.
Yeah.
You know, just like chuckle and laugh every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a send home yesterday, and the dog that was coming into their home was fully trained, and the owner kept making comments. She was like, my other dog doesn't know any of this. Like, and she was panicking, and she was like, he doesn't know the bed stay. He doesn't know how to walk like this. And I was like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, does it bother you that your senior dog is this way? And she's like, a couple of things bother me, but I don't need him to do a bed stay. And she was just thinking that this dog was so well trained that her other dog had to be the same.
Yeah.
Like, you can have different rules for your different dogs. You're just asking yourself, like, is this behavior unsafe? Does it bother me? And like, do I want to fix it? Am I committed to fixing it? So we talked a little bit about like the dog's reactivity, which was the biggest issue. But I was like, you don't have to focus on bed stays if you don't want. Like, your dog doesn't have to do what your other dog's doing. And then people always feel like the dog that's doing the training is going to be hurt or traumatized.
Yeah, right.
To see that their sibling gets like off the hook on things. It's just not that deep.
Yeah, no, it's not that deep. Even like puppies. And I think something that I assure my clients with that makes them feel better is, especially if it's their first dog, you know what I mean? And they're just like, I have no experience or context to draw from, is I tell people, I'm like, tell me everything. Tell me everything the dog's doing, and I will help you gauge whether you should care or be concerned about it. Because I think a lot of people, like, there's certain behaviors puppies will do that are just normal puppy behavior. And when you know dogs and you're more dog savvy, you know that, right? And then there's behaviors that I'm like, oh, that's a red flag. And for some reason, I feel like the wires very much get crossed with people that are very novice. So it's like the really outward behaviors that they think will be concerning, like jumping, play biting, pulling on the leash, like, you know, stuff like that. They think are like, oh no, like we have to get this under control immediately.
Bad.
This is so bad, you know, things like that. Whereas then they're very quick to overlook like, oh, well, they're whining in the crate, so I'm just going to let them out. Or, oh, they can sleep in bed with me. Or, oh, like anytime like my kid goes over and like tries to like take something out of their mouth, the dog is, you know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like a lot of times the things that are big deals and red flags are not perceived that way. And then things that are not are very easily misconstrued into like big problems.
And like you can really, like if you're raising a puppy in the wrong way, they can get really big for their britches.
Yes.
Like we have one right now that in our board and train program that's doing like a 2-week board and train, and she was like, this dog is the most awful dog. It is so aggressive. He's so terrible. And we went over to the house and the dog Shirley was like, who the hell are you? I'm going to bite your leg. And she was like, I don't know what to do about this. And I said, go get the e-collar. We put the e-collar on the dog. He tried to bite again. We corrected him and he was like, never mind. So in those areas, like those behaviors that are happening, like we can build a dog that's like learns that biting, like serious biting works. Play biting, you're not so worried about, but like biting, growling, aggression, guarding the couch, guarding the human, when they start to realize those things work, it like builds on top of each other.
And it's like, what is the context of the biting?
Yeah.
That's important to know too. That's more so what I care about. So like, for instance, with puppies. Okay, so the dog is running around, zooming, and they tag you on the leg as they're going by. Whatever. No big deal. They're getting excited to go for a walk, so they're nipping at your pant legs. No big deal. Snoop used to do this thing when he was a puppy where he'd run up and bite your big toe and then run away.
Yeah.
Hilarious. So like those things, not a big deal to me. What would be a big deal is if you're like, my dog was getting into something in the yard and I went to grab them to pull them out and they whipped around and they bit me. Red flag. Yeah. Right? While yes, it's a puppy bite, so it's not that bad. Yeah. You don't get to bite me in that context. Yeah. That wasn't a game to you.
Like when you're trying to create space kind of bite.
Yes. Yes.
That's exactly like this woman that I'm talking about. Like, she's like, I want people to come in and say hi to the dog. I want to bring this dog everywhere and have people like put their hands in his face. And he kept biting them. And she was like, what the hell? It's like, yes, that's a behavior that you can correct. But again, that's also a behavior that I wouldn't put my dog in a position if they're showing that they're uncomfortable with a stranger. That's a part where I'm like, I have to not be selfish and keep allowing this to happen when my dog clearly doesn't like it. Yep. They don't get to bite. They don't get to freak out at the stranger. Nope. But if like you're putting your hands in a dog's face, like, and they can't get away, they're on leash. Yeah. What are they supposed to do?
Yeah. If they're not comfortable with you. Yeah. Yeah. And that starts to happen because you repeatedly cross their boundaries and just not care. Yeah. I think a lot of times with puppies, people are very guilty of not reading the signs. Your dog doesn't start nipping at people right away when they want them to go away. Yeah. And they're uncomfortable. There's a big lead up to that. Yeah, yeah. And it's like when I start pointing that stuff out to people, they're like, oh no, like we really did miss all of that. Because like I would point out like, oh, well, maybe did you notice that when people would come up to pet the dog that they would start like turning their head away?
Or submissive peeing.
Or backing up or trying to get away. And then you pick up the puppy and you bring it closer to the kid and you force them to do it. And
the kid's like...
Yeah.
with our sticky little nasty fingers.
Yeah. So it's like there's a lot of your dog has been telling you probably for a very long time that they are not comfortable with people invading their space.
Nowhere, and you're like, no, it didn't.
It never happens out of nowhere. And if it does happen out of nowhere, you're in real bad shape because that means your dog has a neurological problem and can't be trusted and needs to be euthanized.
Which does happen, you know?
It does happen, but very rarely. Yeah. And you don't want that to be the case.
No.
I get that people use it happened out of nowhere as a scapegoat so that they don't have to take responsibility for not seeing the signs and noticing them. Wow, Bridget.
Sorry, guys.
But you don't want it to be out of nowhere. That's a bad sign.
Yeah. And you want to advocate for the dog that you have in front of you and do what's right for them. Like, we love our dogs. I don't ever want to put my dog in a situation where they feel uncomfortable when it's not necessary. There's necessary uncomfortable, and there's not necessary uncomfortable. Like, we're going to go to the vet, and the vet's going to touch you. You're going to get your nails done. You're going to get a bath. Somebody might come running up behind us and ask to pet you. Those are the things that you have to, like, chill out with. But unnecessary uncomfortable is like invading space, having people come up to them and doing things that are just super rude and just like doesn't need to happen.
But yeah, do it anyways, guys.
Do it anyways. But don't do it anyways if it doesn't make sense for your lifestyle or if your dog is like, I can hate this.
Yep. Your dog's allowed to dislike things.
Yeah.
They don't have to like it all.
Yeah. I one time brought my Chihuahua puppy to Pins, which is an arcade, and it was so loud. And there was bowling, and I was like, this is great. Like, this is wonderful for her. And the whole time she was like, holy shit, like, this is terrifying. And then, like, a couple of days later, I was like, why the did I do that? Like, why did I do that? It was like, so overwhelming.
Dying.
Yeah.
This is terrible.
And I was like, I don't want her to be the dog that comes to bars with me and goes to arcades with me. And it was just so loud and overstimulating. And I was like, man, I really fucked up. Luckily, nothing adverse have happened from that. But in the moment, she was really uncomfortable. And I was like, oh, man.
Yeah. And there's like a certain degree of like, you just have to know that balance of like how much to push them out of their comfort zone at times, but what's like not too much too fast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's where having a trainer who's knowledgeable and knows what they're doing can come in handy because they can help you navigate that. Like, hey, maybe your kid's soccer game, not yet. We're not going to do that yet.
Yeah.
Maybe down the line, but let's do a couple of these other things first and kind of build up to it. But yeah. Anywho, leave a comment down below of your I did it anyways stories.
Yeah. Let us know.
Let us know. We'd love to hear it.
The people in the YouTube comments, they're just so nice. Like, YouTube is a good place.
It is.
For the most part.
You guys are nice to us here.
Yes, everybody's so nice, and there's interesting conversations. And then you go to Facebook, and people are like, you guys are fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And you should die.
Did you see the one comment towards me that the guy said that he hopes that I get an incurable form of cancer and I die and the world would be a better place?
Yeah, because you were working with a Yorkie that had serious behavioral issues. You're insane.
That's crazy behavior.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good thing I'm mentally stable because I just had a very close family member to me die from cancer. So thanks for bringing that back up, buddy. But anyways.
Yes. And I think, like, you're such a loser if you keep commenting on a page that you don't like. Like, that's loser behavior.
It is. What are you doing? Just stalking
They're
us?
like, it's my duty to let
so
other
obsessed.
people know and advocate for dogs. Like, nobody cares.
Nobody cares. You're not saving the world. You're not a hero. You're not the only smart person that, thank goodness you're here to let everybody know that they're too stupid to be able to discern whether we're doing things right or not.
And from like 30-second clips, they're like, these people are abusive. They suck. Where then you and I both get like beautiful handwritten cards from our clients. They're like, you've changed my life and I can't thank you enough.
That's all that matters to me. The people in real life that I see on a daily basis instead of a bunch of trolls on the internet with no life.
Yeah.
They're so obsessed with us. Glad you could find some entertainment.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
See ya.